Great. All right. Thank you all for coming tonight for the LOCAC Council meeting. Going to call to order and take a roll call. District 1, Andrea.
Present.
David, Chenny.
Here.
District 2, Jim Salio. I didn't actually hear you, but I thought you said something.
Oh, you're on mute.
Am I?
No, you're just
Nope,
real quiet.
you're
I
just
gotcha,
very quiet.
Jim. All right, we have a vacancy in District 2. Gary Katayama, District 3.
Here.
Brad Spar, District 3.
Here.
Gotcha. Myself, District 4. John Lynn is out of country. Jim Stanfield.
Here.
Molly Brown.
Here.
Trish Bartel.
Present.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Chairperson announcements. Saturday, we had a town hall meeting at the Sunnyside School site to discuss the potential purchase of the Sunnyside School site as a park and rec for the community. It was very, very well attended. I don't have exactly the number of people who showed up, but it was well over 100. I would say maybe 150 people came, and it was very positive energy in the room. We had a presentation by the CSD. The county, Bruce Gibson was there, and also the Wallace Group, an engineering firm that was hired as a consultant to do some conceptual plans for the potential park. It was just really great energy. So we're going to hear details about that meeting on the CSD report, which comes up a little bit later. And that's my announcement. Are there any council member announcements? David?
Yeah, I was just going to comment a little bit on the work we're trying to do on the website and communications. In a couple of the other earlier meetings, we got some comments about LOCAC needs to communicate more with the public. So I've been working a little bit with Gary and Deborah to just try to update the website a little bit, get it a little bit so there's news on the front page about what committees are meeting and what their main topic is and what meetings and events have occurred and what the main results were. And just to update the membership. And I have a few more things that I'd like to do that we'll discuss with the council, including having a about LOCAC page that would sort of describe in one place the membership and processes and elections and things like that. And then it would make the contact page a little clearer, because some of the stuff from there could move to the about LOCAC and then make it a little bit clearer about who to contact on things. So a few other changes in mind that I'd happy to get input on and discuss further.
Thank you, David. David is our newest council member, and he's come in with a lot of enthusiasm to participate. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, David, because website stuff, you can get easily bogged down, and for you to take that on, it's a big task, and I thank you. Do we have any questions about that? I don't see any hands, so we'll move on. County and local reports, starting with the sheriff's report. I know you're here, if I can find you.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Okay.
Hi there. Hi,
Hi.
Commander Boss here. Looking at our call statistics for the month, we had a total of 416 calls for service as compared to 449 calls for service from the month prior. I'm sorry, from the year prior, which included 39 enforcement stops, 13 patrol activities, and 7 disturbances. Also want to highlight an incident that we were involved in about 2 weeks ago. In summary, the state parks unit got into a pursuit with a vehicle on South Bay that was driving recklessly and evading The State Parks unit was able to follow the vehicle to a residence. The subject then barricaded in his residence and requested our assistance. After initiating dialogue with the subject ultimately was apprehended with minimal force being applied. The school, Los Osos Middle School, did go into a lockdown because of the proximity of the incident, but there was no outstanding public safety risk once the subject was contained. Again, he was taken into custody with minimal force. And that's all I have, unless anybody has any questions for me.
All right, well, job well done. Thank you very much for that. Do we have any questions? I see,
Yeah, I have a
Jim, your hand is
question.
up.
Yeah, Hank, the Morro Bay, not Morro Bay, but the State Park Patrol vehicle, it was in pursuit of that vehicle, wasn't it?
Yes, correct.
And do they have a pursuit policy that allows them to do pursuits outside the park?
Yeah, there's sworn peace officers, and they have, just like any other sworn peace officer powers, throughout the state of California. So yes, they do.
And what I heard is that they went through in pursuit, went through a red light on South Bay and San Isabel with no siren, just lights.
The parks unit.
Yeah.
That I'm not sure about. We were requested once the pursuit essentially. So in the pursuing unit ended up losing visual of the vehicle during the course of the pursuit, was directed towards a general area where bystanders directed the unit to where the suspect was last seen, and the unit ended up seeing the vehicle parked in a driveway, then requested us. So I don't know the details of the pursuit, like if it was one of our pursuits where we would perform a pursuit critique. Typically, yeah, you would utilize lights and sirens, particularly when approaching an intersection, in order to what we call clear the intersection or proceed through an intersection, alerting the public that you're going to be proceeding through against especially a red light. Utilizing lights and sirens does not absolve law enforcement from driving with due regard for public safety. So public safety is paramount in those high stress and potentially high risk situations. So they would have had dialogue with their communications division and to provide them updates as to the progress of the pursuit. And again, it's up to the individual pursuing deputy or officer to determine whether or not potential risk to public safety, and then driving with due regard for public safety, regardless of the specifics of the want at all times, even when driving with lights and sirens.
Okay, so we might just check with the parks rangers and ask them to be sure to use lights and sirens in the future.
Sure,
Can we do
and that's going to be again. Typically, there is a post-incident review of incidents like pursuits. Again, for the sheriff's office, once a pursuit is initiated, a supervisor, which would include things like ensuring that they were clearing the intersection in a safe manner. So I don't know the particulars of that pursuing vehicle passing through the intersection. And I don't know if there was traffic there. I would imagine there was time a day. Yeah, but I can follow up.
That'd be great. Okay. Any other questions for the sheriff? I don't see anything, so let's move on to the highway patrol report. I see Mr. Ferguson is with us.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate that. It's good to see everybody's faces. My second meeting, so it's fun to see all the returning faces and try to get to recognize everybody. I do want to commend Hank and his team. I was too out there for that pursuit, and I think this just speaks volumes of how the community can actually help us when they see something to say something, and they were able to quickly direct units to where we needed to go rather than losing the suspect that did run from law enforcement and placed everybody's else's life in peril. So I thought that was great, seeing the community come together and help law enforcement. The overwhelming support while we were out there from everybody is refreshing, and I certainly enjoyed that. With regards to the High Patrol side, during last month we had 4 property damage, traffic collisions, 1 minor injury. Minor injury can consist of somebody saying, I have a pain to my neck, I just need to go to the doctor, I'll do that on my own, versus a major injury consists of like broken bones, lacerations, things of that nature. And then we had 1 hit and run during this time. I do want to highlight a enforcement period on April 1st that we're going to have. It's called the maximum enforcement period throughout the state. 80% of our staffing will be out on the road, including myself, management, assistant chiefs, and chiefs throughout the entire state. We'll be looking for various DUIs, aggressive driving, speed, with more of a target focused on distracted driving. So that's going to occur on the 1st. I'll give you guys a little inside information. I don't think the press release has gone out yet for that, but I wanted to let you guys know. And then following that, that ends on Wednesday at 0600, so 6 in the morning. We gather all the stats throughout the state, and then by the next time, I'll be able to report how the San Luis Obispo CHP office did with regards to this maximum enforcement period.
That'll be very interesting. Andrea, I see your hand is up.
I'm just curious, beyond the fact that it's April Fool's Day, is there a significance to April 1st for that maximum enforcement?
No, typically what our state is trying to do now is, before we had set holidays, Memorial Day, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Labor Day, I think New Year's, where we called them maximum enforcement periods. So now they've broken away from that, and now they call those particular days holiday enforcement periods. And so I think they're trying to ascertain from previous, empirical data what days work best. I think it's going to be constantly like an organic moving date. If this doesn't seem to be a particular date that is productive and helping reduce the mileage death rate, next year you may see something completely different. There's additional days that they've chosen in June, and then another day in October as well for the maximum enforcement period.
Thanks.
Of
All
course.
right, Molly, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, did you say there was a hit and run, and was it of a pedestrian, or what was the nature of it? And is that something that gets followed up with for possible arrest in the future?
Yeah, so the location that I have on there, it doesn't indicate of a pedestrian, because typically that would likely involve an injury. It happened at the Rite Aid parking lot.
Oh, okay.
Was the information that I have on that. And depending on whether or not the people are able to gather license plate information, security camera footage from surrounding areas, and then one of the obstacles that we do face when seeking prosecution on hit and runs is being able to identify the driver of it. In the court system, we have to be able to have the victim identify the actual driver. So absent a confession from somebody else, which typically we will try to interview. If we go to somebody's house, we have a license plate, who was driving, and through our just open discussions with people, if somebody doesn't openly admit to it and they say, I loaned my car to somebody else, I just sold the car, whatever the case may be, that's some of the problems that we do have. And we ask somebody, hey, can you identify this person, so we can take that to the district attorney's office and hopefully get a conviction.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions? Jim Stanfield.
There was an accident in the corner of South Bay and Santa Isabel last week. Looked pretty serious. I don't hear any report on that.
No, I don't have that one listed. That'd be something I'd have to look into and pull up to for the next report. I should have that.
Fine.
Okay, any other questions? Don't see any hands. All right, thank you so much.
Wonderful. And safe driving to everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Basin Management Committee, they haven't had a meeting, so there's no report from Dan Heimel this month. County staff report, Mason, you're up.
All right. Hey, good evening. Thank you, Deborah. I just have two pretty quick things. I know there's some projects later on in the agenda, so I'll stick around for those. The two primary things to note from County Planning and Building were forwarded to Deborah, hoping that some of those emails made it out. So the first thing is there's a flyer that should have been sent around, and it looks a little bit like this. And my blur is going to kick in. So apologies. I think Deborah did forward it, but I will follow up tomorrow with another copy just in case. And it is related to our 22nd Annual Community Advisory Council orientation. So last year, I think there were several of you guys that were there. I saw some of you have already signed up. I saw Jim on the list, Jim Salio. I saw Deborah Howe. I think I'm missing one or two other people. But it will be Friday, April 18th at 8 a.m. And that's at the SLO County Library. Sorry, the SLO City Library. There's that little community room off to the side. And there'll be like free refreshments, and it will give a very good overview of the county planning process, everything from what establishes the legal framework at like a state level to even a little bit of CEQA, some of our ordinances, what the advisory council process looks like, mainly as it relates to you guys for the land use committee. We will have some members of our board of supervisors there. We will have our deputy director, one of the planning commissioners, division managers, GIS personnel, county council. It's just a good opportunity to learn more about planning, land use aside. The second thing that I have for you guys tonight is on April 24th, there's going to be a project that will go from the planning department before your board of supervisors. And it is a county initiated amendments to our inland and our coastal land use ordinances. So Title 22 and 23 amendments. And it has to do primarily with accessory dwellings and SB 9 urban lot splits. SB 9 is it's a reference to the Senate bill that establishes the framework. And those ordinance amendments to Title 22 and 23 are being made to keep us in the county compliant with requirements that are already a part of state law. That's generally all I have. I'm available for any additional questions.
Okay, Brad, I see you have a question.
Yeah, I don't get downtown very much. What are the parking arrangements for the planning meeting? Or where do we park?
I believe just there's the parking garage. It's right next door to the library.
Okay.
There's plenty of metered spots. I will follow up with Deborah tomorrow about potential for vouchers. I don't recall if we had any last year.
Yes.
Thank you. Awesome. So the vouchers for CAC Community Advisory Council members.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to say I went last year to the orientation. It was so well worth it for council members. In fact, some of the other advisory councils were there in full force. So I'd like to see, it was just Molly and myself there last year. So I'd like to see more people showing up from Los Osos. It is well worth it. You're going to get to meet all these county people that really are involved with doing any sort of land use and planning. And it was actually a lot of fun. We did get a parking voucher. The parking lot is literally right next door. So you hardly have to walk at all. So it's very convenient. That's my sales job.
No, thank you, Deborah. Sorry, I see Molly has her hand up. I did want to just add to that. We will have, so one of the points of feedback we got from last year was there wasn't enough time for Q&A. A lot of people had a lot more questions about the planning process, and we've kind of put in some more time throughout. Instead of doing it all at the end, I think we have several sections of 15 minutes where there'll be a small presentation and then questions. In addition, you had mentioned other departments. We will have, I believe, Mr. Ansolabaher from County Council there. We will have someone from Public Works that will be there. I know that there's been some questions about some projects in Los Osos related to the downtown area and parking, and being in Public Works purview, there should hopefully be a little bit of context related to, you know, what their involvement in the process is.
Yeah, Molly, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I would just reiterate what Deborah said. I went last year. I'm not able to go this year because I'll be out of town. But for any newer council members on LOCAC, I really highly recommend it because it just the whole event gave a really good overview of a lot about the planning process, but also just about how the different county departments work and what the people are responsible for. And so for anyone who's newer to LOCAC, I highly recommend it. And the staff just did a great job. And you get to meet people from other advisory councils. And there's a lot, there's something like 11 or 12 in the county. And some of them are very active. And, you know, I got ideas from other people by talking with them there. And so anyway, I just highly recommend it.
Thanks, Molly. Andrea, I see your hands up.
Yeah, Deborah, and just want to go back to the Basin Management Committee real quickly. It seems like this is at least the second meeting this year, maybe in a row, that they haven't met. Is there and maybe this is more of a Ron Munn's question, but do they typically cancel meetings? It seems like a pretty important group to continue to cancel meetings, but I don't want to read too much into that without more explanation.
And it's a good question, Andrea. I think they meet when they have something to talk about, but it would be nice if we had more updates. So I feel the same way.
I'll speak
So
to that,
maybe-
Madam Chair.
Okay, great. So Bruce can make that. Do you want to comment now, Bruce?
Well, only that you're spot on. I mean, we have a number of initiatives moving forward. You know, a lot of times those are being conducted by technical folks in the background. And if we don't have a decision to make, if we're waiting for information to be developed, we do cancel. We probably cancel 2 to 3 a year. I think when we first convened, we were meeting every other month. So there was a point at which, as we worked toward the community plan, getting in front of the Coastal Commission, we upped that to at least holding a spot for a monthly meeting. But yeah, as we're if we don't have anything to decide, we will let it roll over to the next time. But that said, if anybody has questions, please don't reach out to any of the members. Certainly my office is happy to provide information, answer questions.
Thank you, Bruce. Any other questions for Mason? Jim, you have your hand up?
I just on back to the ordinance change on ADUs. So are they going to allow ADUs in Los Osos?
Currently under Title 23, they are prohibited. I think earlier this month there was discussion about including that in the item going on April 24th. ADUs going in the ordinance amendment that would allow them in Los Osos is no longer part of the amendment that's going to the Board of Supervisors on April 24th.
Okay, thank you.
Got it. So no ADUs in Los Osos.
Correct.
That
Still.
okay. Very good. Thank you for the clarification. And I don't see any more hands. So we'll move on to Supervisor Gibson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Pleasure, as always, to be with you. Let me just carry on the question of the ADUs. And that the reason is that if ADUs are allowed, we got a number of things to figure out, how to manage them relative to the wait list. And we are in the midst of a significant technical upgrade to our water modeling, and that'll be out later in the year. And so before taking what could be a fairly significant step forward, we wanted to get those things nailed down. So for the time being, and not wanting to engage a very challenging Coastal Commission process, we're gonna pause it still. But I would expect maybe this time next year you would be hearing about some consideration. I hope. We'll see. It's hard to know where the future goes here. Let me add my voice as well. Thank you, Mason, for being here and for your part and all the parts of the planning department that are putting together the training. it is an extraordinary opportunity. As people said, meet the folks who work in this area of the county, including our new county council, John and Sola Beher, who started a couple weeks ago, and also your colleagues from other advisory councils. It's you have a lot that they can learn from you. It's clear and beyond any reasonable doubt that the District 2 advisory councils are the best, and we'll just I try not to be smug about that around my colleagues, but it is a fact. I don't have well, let me speak to Los Osos specific. I had the pleasure of being in the room last Saturday. It was an outstanding experience. The energy was wonderful. I think I just see, I'm really optimistic that this community can come push this idea of securing Sunnyside forward. As I indicated there, the county stands by as a partner. My colleagues are really cautious about our financial situation, and I'll talk a bit about that in just a second. So their main concern is that the county is not be in a position to secure a piece of property that's going to incur ongoing operations and maintenance expense. And I understand that. We do have some funds available to make one-time investments for things like acquisition. And as the community vision for what's going to go on that property starts to crystallize, and the CSD, and let me thank the CSD, Mr. Munns, of course, has been great to work with. All the board has been fantastic as well. But as that vision crystallizes, then we'll look for places where the county can participate. And again, I'm happy to stay close to the process and help in any way I can. And if anyone has questions, please don't hesitate to reach out for me. The budget challenge, it's a problem. I tend to euphemize problem by calling it a challenge, but we have a budget that's really, really tough this year. We've identified the likelihood that if we are to continue services, just to say, if we are continuing the services we do this year into the next fiscal year, which starts on July 1, we are going to see the expense go up $35 million or so more than the revenue that we expect. Revenue does go up, but expenses are going up faster. And so we are looking at just into the teeth of a really tough structural situation that's going to require us to decide what programs we are going to have to reduce or eliminate. It's going to be a very, very difficult decision to do. Our staff, led by our county administrative officer, our chief staff person is Matt Pontes, is literally going through every program that the county does, looking really carefully at the results, at the efficiency, at the ability possibly to secure more revenue to support it. And it turns out that well over half of our county budget is revenue that comes in from the state and federal government. So how we interact with those state and federal programs makes a big difference as to how much revenue we pull down to do a particular job. Those are things specifically in the health, human services, social safety net, those kinds of places. It's pretty prominent. So probably going to be a couple of years of tough work here. The other thing we also realize, expenses are going up because we have to compete for staff. We have to pay our employees fairly in order to be able to recruit and retain them in such a high cost of living county. And so there's an extra squeeze there. But anyway, we will see the recommended budget come out on the 20th of May, and our budget hearings start in the second week of June. I think the Monday is June 9th, and we have them scheduled for June 9, 10, and 11. So that's the report from my office, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Okay, I see a question from Andrea. Go ahead.
Bruce, I listened to a little bit of the meeting and I have a question. There was a discussion item, actually was an ordinance, changing an ordinance, and it was the ordinance to amend sections of Title 22 to allow school district housing at a
Mhm.
particular site. It appeared in the
Mhm.
staff report, but
Mhm.
would that have any, would that ordinance, I'm guessing that ordinance would have an effect on all school district sites, or could have an effect on all school district sites within the county. And, I'm thinking Sunnyside. Is
Yeah.
that fair to assume that that could be?
It's absolutely reasonable to assume, but in fact, the ordinance that we were working on there is only for the inland areas of the county.
Okay.
So it's outside the coastal zone, and the project came forward focused on a specific site that's essentially within the Choro Regional Park area. The school, this board, the county office of education has property there. When it went to the planning commission, the planning commission said, hey, if a school district owns land that is zoned public facilities, which is what school land is zoned, any school district that has public facilities land should be able to be allowed to pursue housing on that land. Again, only in the inland areas outside the coastal zone. We looked at that and said that seems reasonable. No need to drag them through this process every single time. We can just do a hearing on just a permit. We don't have to do the rezoning. But it also seems to me that we should extend this into the coastal zone as well, and we should really open that up to any public agency that has public facility zoned land. That's a whole separate process that's probably going to take years to accomplish. Go through the planning process. It'll come to the advisory councils, has to go through the planning commission. But that lines us up with a lot of thinking at the state level, where publicly owned land, if it makes sense to be developed as housing, could and should. I will say that on the specifics of Sunnyside, the school district thought about developing it as workforce housing for their staff, or at least a portion of it, in a study session last year, and they concluded that for the school district, the complications of doing that just far outweighed the benefit. They just didn't want to get into the landlord business or the housing business. So that is not the intent of Sunnyside. That continues as a surplus land sale. So all is status quo on that.
Okay, and just one quick budget question. I feel like I read or heard somewhere where the county's unfunded pension liability is nearing $1 billion. Is that factual?
I don't know the exact number of it, but there is a plan that if you look at the San Luis Obispo County Pension Trust, there is a plan going out over 30 years to eventually drive the unfunded liability to zero. And
Right.
there's going to be a lot of momentum in doing that, coming out of 2012, when the state passed a law that it's called PEPRA. I think it's Public Employee Pension Reform Act.
Yeah,
Got it.
different formulas for people.
Different formulas. And so about 2/3 of the workforce of the county is now on a reduced benefit. If you were hired at the county from 2012 onward, your pension benefit is not quite as rich as it was if you were hired before 2012, and that's going to help a lot. That's going to help reduce that. But it's an ongoing. Yes, it exists. It's an ongoing issue they're trying to correct. It is an unfunded liability of future payments, not current payments, and we'd have to compare that to what their net asset situation is. But our pension trust does great work, and they're on it.
Thanks.
All right, good question. Jim Salio.
Bruce, on the budget, is the budget worse than it was when we did the 7-year pain plan?
it is a little bit worse than the worst year of the 7-year pain plan. If I'll give you just a little bit of wonk here. Normally, what we do in projecting the next fiscal year's budget is look at the cost of doing the same programs, look at the expected revenue, without factoring in the fact that any salary increases that we don't know about. And we deal with those as we go into the ongoing budget year. This year, we are opening negotiations soon with our biggest union, represents almost 2/3 of the county workforce. And we know that cost of living being what it is and recruitment and retention being what it is, we're going to have to increase salaries. It's just a given. And so in this next fiscal year's budget, we're going to, we added an extra increment of expense, a guesstimate of, or at least part of what we expect might be added to salaries. And that's what raised it up around $33 to $35 million. The other challenge of this budget is in the pain plan, which was for those of you who didn't track county budget details from years and years ago, 15, 17 years ago, as we were going into the Great Recession, we actually used some of our reserves to ease the pain a little bit. We're not in a position to do that this time. We're going to have to make cuts, and we're in great financial shape, but we also have increased constraints on how much we should hold in reserve, especially with the uncertainty at the federal level. And so the budget plan at this point is not to use reserves to try to taper this off. So it's going to be a tougher than normal budget balancing act this year.
Great. Another great question. Molly, I see your hand. Molly?
She's muted.
Unmute. Okay.
Oh, there she is.
So I just have a question. Is there a lot of federal money that is used in whatever kind of money that comes down from the feds that the county relies on an annual basis, or is it more like grants for specific projects?
No, it's ongoing. I should have that budget number in front of me, but we have about roughly an $850 million budget. I want to say that somewhere around 40%, 30 to 40% is money that comes from the state and federal government to fund things like our version of Medicaid, which is called Medi-Cal,
Right.
to fund our Department of Social Services safety net programs like CalWorks, to fund things like the SNAP program, a supplemental nutrition assistance program. It used to be called food stamps. All those kinds of things. And that's really the core services of counties are to provide the services that the state and federal government mandates us to provide. So yes, money coming from the federal government, especially for Medi-Cal, Medicaid, is huge. And that's why these proposed cuts that are being kicked around Congress of $880 billion in Medicaid cuts that would devastate, and it's not just California, that will devastate the entire country and a lot of states that voted to put this administration into place.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Another good question. Jim, did you have another question?
I mean, I guess the question is, if state and federal money is cut, does the county try to backfill those services with county general fund dollars? And that's a losing proposition, I know you know that, but
yep, we can't. We couldn't even come close. I mean, in our social safety net, we put up 5% or 10% of the money to draw down the other 90% from the state or the feds. In Medicaid, it's a 50-50 split between the state and the feds. but the actual county general fund support is again in the 5 to 10%, if that. Our county has put in more general fund than we have to. There's some minimum levels that we have to in order to be able to draw these monies down. And unfortunately, it is in those programs in particular that will likely see us reducing back to doing closer to the minimum that we have to do. That's not good. That's not good for our communities. But I've been very proud. I've been very proud of how we've managed that. We especially put more money than we have to into behavioral health, but we have a reckoning coming on that. And again, we're in good financial shape, but it's still going to be a really tough decision-making process.
All right. Good discussion, good questions. Thank you so much.
bet.
Really important information. I don't see any more hands for Supervisor Gibson from the council. Do I have any questions from the community for Supervisor Gibson? You raise your hand. And I don't see any hands, so we'll move on. Thank you. CSD report. Ron, are you doing the report or is someone else here?
Hi, I'm here.
Oh, Tom.
Tom's
Tom, you snuck in on me. All right, super. Tom Cross will be doing the report for the CSD. Go ahead.
All right, hello. I just want to introduce myself formally as a director on the CSD now, newly appointed in January. A couple of things, because most of the focus that the CSD is on right now is the Sunnyside thing, which Ron will go into more detail after me. First things first, weed abatement inspections are coming up. So given the ongoing wildfire problem statewide, the CSD wants property owners to be aware of the upcoming property inspections for weed abatement and other fire hazards. Starting May 1st with the first notification, we're going to be starting those inspections on May 1st. The first notifications will be sent on May 22nd, and we'll be being a little more aggressive with the enforcement this year because of worsening climate conditions. If you have any questions or want to report an issue, the best way to do so is by using the district's website. Click on the contact us option at the top of the page. In addition to that, we're working on an emergency preparedness plan. The district's emergency services advisory committee and LOCAC have been working on developing an emergency plan that is specific to Los Osos. This is in response to the heavy rains and Vista de Oro incident that happened in 2023. We're trying to organize the community's responses based on the experiences gained. One of the specific needs that was identified was the need for temporary emergency shelters. Community center is we're working on getting a generator set up there to be a emergency shelter, and we've been working on a plan to provide backup power and identifying how much that will cost. Any more information, you can reach out to the CSD and Ron, etc. That's all I have for my part of the report.
Okay. For you, Tom, I do see Molly has her hand up. Go ahead, Molly.
The May 1st, whatever you're talking about, is that a wildfire prevention inspection on like properties for like weed abatement program?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I have written down right here. That is a weed
Okay.
abatement inspection.
And is that done by CAL FIRE or by CSD?
I'm not sure. Ron, do you have any more information
Yes,
on that?
that's done by CAL FIRE, our fire station staff.
Okay. And does it go out beyond the main part of Los Osos? Like, does it go out towards the cemetery?
No, it's within our boundary,
Oh, okay.
but that area is part of the state responsibility area. They call it the SRA, and there are inspections that are done beyond.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. Do I see any other questions? I actually had a question come to me from the public about CAL FIRE moving from Los Osos and consolidating somewhere else at the county, and wondered if the loss of the CAL FIRE program there is going to affect our emergency preparedness?
Oh, let me answer that.
Mhm.
No, the quick answer is no. Basically, that was their training center, and they had staff obviously there and had, the facilities like the auditorium where we had our meeting on Saturday. But basically, they're splitting off the group. Part of that is a cooperation with Cal Poly that was using Cal Poly students, interns, to help them develop wildland fire response. So that part of their operation is moving to Cal Poly. The other part, which was basically the Cal Poly or a Cal Fire training program, is moving to their facility, which is out by Cuesta College. It has no impact on our response here. Our station stays intact and staffed as we always have.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Do any other questions for Tom? I know, Ron, you're going to speak on Sunnyside, so why don't you go ahead?
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
just wanted to, yeah,
Mhm.
thanks, Tom. I just wanted to give a brief summary of what happened at the meeting on Saturday. And I do have to thank Supervisor Gibson. He was a great partner in putting all that together. We had between 150 and 200 people. There's a great article in the Estero Bay News that just came out. So I encourage people to pick that up. There's a couple of inaccuracies in there, but basically did summarize what we had going. Just how the agenda went, the opening comments were provided by LOCAC's Deborah Howe. We thank Deborah for her efforts and Trish especially too, on how we put together that meeting. Then it was followed up by me, and I was tried to give a timeline of how the CSD became the lead agency. And I think, Supervisor Gibson gave a good summary that we were notified earlier in the year that the county was, because of budget issues, couldn't commit to this type of expenditure in the ongoing operation and maintenance of a facility like this. So that led the CSD to become the lead agency. And I really am thankful to LOCAC and especially Deborah and Trish and others that really stepped up to help us organize that meeting. And again, Supervisor Gibson was part of that. And basically what I was trying to express, and we need to continue to tell people in our community the uniqueness of this opportunity that we have in front of us. And this is really like kind of a one-shot opportunity or deal to keep this almost 12-acre parcel in public ownership. And if we aren't successful, will go to private ownership. The school district is in their own budget woes, and they will be trying to maximize what they can get out of this property, and as well as the one in Morro Bay, which is understandable. And I want to express that, the proceeds from this to the school district do go back into facility maintenance within the school district bound, all the other schools. So it doesn't go to salaries, administrative overhead, or anything else. So, they're motivated by their budget woes to get top dollar and then reinvest that back into our schools, not only in Los Osos, but district-wide. This is, again, a tremendous opportunity to provide that much needed park space we need. We have a lot of passive recreation. Montana de Oro, we have the Audubon Society property down at Sweet Springs, and all the other ones. But we're desperately needing other types of park space, mostly for active recreation. And this is really, an opportunity to acquire a space for indoor and outdoor areas for the community to gather, and that this is really a generational opportunity for us. What we're trying to decide here is, we've heard comments that, well, I don't use parks, or I don't do this, or I don't do that with park space. This is really a unique way to shape our downtown core. Again, if we allow this to be sold to a private developer, it will change that downtown core quite a bit. And this will allow that generational thing for us and future generations to be able to have an extended park space in the middle of town. You know, right across the street is the community park, and this 12 acres is to the south and up towards, you know, the hills, towards Highland Drive. After I spoke, you know, Supervisor Gibson followed up with what I thought was a great presentation on the county's position. I mean, again, I really appreciate his participation, because it really came across well on where they were at and what they could and couldn't do for us. And then that was followed by the CSD had hired the consulting group Wallace Group to provide a presentation. And they provided a really kind of high level overview of two conceptual designs that could happen there. It was like, if we wanted to do something minimal, what that might look like. If we wanted to do something a little above that, like we called it the moderate level, what that might look like. And then there's a very high level analysis of cost. That was very well received. Again, we have to emphasize that between technically February, when my board authorized us to move forward, and March 22nd, we really didn't have much time to put together the information that was provided at that town hall meeting. We did talk, like I said, about the acquisition cost, the improvements at a high level. And then the best part, or not the best part, a very good part of it was the question and answer period. Again, Supervisor Gibson and myself tried our best to answer a lot of questions, a lot of tough questions. And I think we did fairly well. We did it through, you know, cards being submitted and then actual questions from the participants. And that was about 45 minutes. So all in all, very successful. You know, the next steps are showing that we really have still a lot of work to do. We had a meeting this morning with the consultant group and LOCAC and CSD on how we plan to move forward. We're going to have to really hone in on the costs, because we are pushing ourselves quickly towards a ballot measure for a property tax assessment. But we want to take in all the considerations. This could be potential grant funding, financial support from outside groups. We want to make sure what we're asking for from the community is realistic and hopefully as affordable as possible. But we're very excited. Like I said, still a lot of work to do. And like I said, this is a generational opportunity that we feel we really need to take as far as we can. And we have to give it our best shot. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Any questions for Ron? Andrea?
I think it's an easy one, but I get a lot of questions now after Saturday. What's next? Where will we find what's next? How do we know what's next? Where can, you know, so what can we tell people? Is there going to be, you know, a clearinghouse for information? I think that's going to be really important. And I thought both you and Mr. Gibson did a really good job with those questions, because we reread them all, and there was some challenging ones. So nice job on that.
Well, thank you. You know, and that's a great question, Andrea. We're using the CSD website right now as the place where we'll keep posting, and I know LOCAC will post as well. As far, you know, we know what we have to do. Wallace Group has been amazing. That we have cost estimations going. They just weren't ready for prime time. And so now we have to really dive in deep into those and what do those mean. The considerations, you know, we can get hard cost and we can estimate something, but we want to make it like I said, as affordable and realistic. So we're not trying to shoot for a higher dollar amount than we actually need. So, you know, our intent is to keep the momentum. We need to, you know, look at the schedule for the next town hall. It really needs to be in April, but we don't want to, you know, schedule something and not have something, you know, really that we can stand behind in terms of cost. But cost is our next deliverable.
Okay, so we'll just tell people, keep an eye on the the CSD
That's
website. Perfect.
Right, and we'll do how we did for the town hall meeting, which obviously turned out well in terms of getting the word out. Because it's amazing how all these little stakeholder groups, you know, the soccer league, the little league, pickleball, everyone, when we broadcast something, they broadcast it even further. But you'll see it on our normal things, Facebook, Nextdoor, Instagram. But yeah, we'll do our best to get that information out.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Ron? Okay, so I just want to say that LOCAC, in an effort to support and facilitate the town hall, we put together the survey and put it on our MailChimp. And so I have the most current results of the survey. If you'd like to know what the results are, I'm happy to reveal them. Otherwise, we'll move on.
Oh, no, we want definitely share.
Okay, well, let's start by telling you there were 873 people who took the survey. The first question was, I live in Los Osos, yes or no? And 847 said yes, 26 said no. That's kind of important if we are going to do a property tax assessment. And then the next question was, I support the acquisition of Sunnyside School Site as a park and recreation area for Los Osos. 820 people responded that they supported, and 53 said no. And then we asked questions about the different things that you might want to see there, but I'm not going to really go into that because it's too hard to do the graph. But the final question, I would contribute more per month on my property taxes to support a park at Sunnyside, which would greatly benefit our community. 152 people said zero. 198 people said they would pay an additional $8 to $12 a month. 119 people said they would pay $12 to $16 more per month. 115 people said they would pay $16 to $20 per month. And 206 people responded they would pay up to $20 to $24 per month. And then there were a couple that came in that said they'd pay even more. So that's how the survey went. We did have some complaints about the survey. They found it confusing. There was some, you know, they didn't feel like it really was the best. Since it was our first survey, you know, it's okay. But we're going to do a second survey. We're going to do survey 2.0, and it's going to be only 4 questions. It's going to really be distilled down, and we're going to be putting that. We're not going to change the link. We're not going to change the QR code. Just when you click or do the QR code, it's going to take you to the survey, but the survey is going to have a little bit of a change. It's just going to be a little more basic without questions like, do you want the library? Do you want the dog park? That kind of stuff. Because we don't really know what's going to be there yet. Any questions about that? Any problems with the survey? Questions about changing it, or David?
Well, just what's the process? In general, it's good with a survey to do kind of either pre-test or have a lot of eyes on it. I'd be happy to look at it if you
Great,
wanted.
I'd love that. Excellent. Okay, moving on. Chamber of Commerce, Jim, where are you?
Yeah, right here.
There you are.
One of our most significant events of the year coming up soon on Sunday, April the 9th, 5 o'clock at our community center. We'll be having a dinner to recognize the significant people in our community. We'll have the business of the year, the new business of the year, the nonprofit of the year, citizen of the year, volunteer of the year. So it's a great event, bringing people together. It's $65, and you can sign up on the website and get yourself into that meal. Last year was a great meal, and it's a valuable thing. So hope you can make it.
What was the date again, Jim?
It's Sunday, April the 9th.
It's the
It-
6th.
What is it?
It's the 6th.
April
6th. Thank you,
6th?
Gary. 6 and
Sunday,
7,
April
yeah.
6th.
6th.
Okay.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank
Another meeting on the 9th. Yeah.
Any questions for Jim about the chamber? Okay. Public comments for items not on the agenda. Do we have any public comments tonight? I need to see your hands. I don't see any hands. Moving on. Committee reports, treasurer's report, Jim?
We had a beginning balance as of February the 1st of $1,693.04. We received 13 cents in interest. And we spent $10 on our Zoom and website and that sort of thing, for an ending balance of $1,683.17, I believe it is. Okay.
All right, thank you. Committee reports, land use, Jim?
Nothing more to report out on land use from our meeting, other than we have the 2 items on the agenda tonight that we reviewed. The one thing, though, that we did talk about, and Mason's been nice enough to offer Dominic Del Porto from planning, who oversees the well, he's the expert on the build list, and that's kind of one of the things that we have, how that system works and that kind of stuff. So we have a lot of questions about that and the timing of permits coming to the land use committee. So we're going to have a training for that. We'll make it, we'll announce that. So if anybody's not on the land use committee but wants to learn more about that, can be there. But it's certainly something that the land use committee really needs to get a handle on, because it's we're getting projects coming through on the build list that may not be built for years and years and years. So we're just kind of trying to understand that process. But that's it from land use. Molly, I don't know if you have anything you want to add.
Okay.
No, not right now, thanks.
Right, yes, I think we're breaking new ground here with the changes in our building, you know, with the issuance of permits. So I appreciate you guys taking the extra time, bringing in a little bit more staff from the county to work through that so that we have a really good understanding. Thank you, Jim. Trees and landscape, Andrea.
We're working through a couple of planting projects now. There's nothing new. They're both have been approved by this board. We did revise the language for the policies and procedures manual for tree and landscape. So I'll send that. And then we're also figuring out, and I actually need to probably get a hold of Blake and Bruce's office, because we have a watering brigade that's watering some of the trees and landscaping that we planted. We want to make sure that have a appropriate release of liability for those people that are doing that. We'll have a link on our website for that. So we're working through that. And I want to see if anyone else in the county is doing that, any other advisory boards. Other than that, we always meet the 3rd Thursday of the month at 6:30 on Zoom. Join us.
All right, any questions for Andrea? Don't see any questions. So transportation, that's my little committee. So we're really gearing up for next month. There will be a presentation by the county of the Los Osos Valley Road Corridor Study. This is a study that was funded by LOCAC, and it's a very important study for Los Osos because it will be making changes to the current plans for not just the Los Osos Valley Road, but also active transportation. So pedestrians and bicycles will be included as part of that corridor study. So we're doing some deep dives into that, making sure that we're prepared to provide comment when the county brings that corridor study to LOCAC in April. The other thing we've been discussing within the Transportation Committee is what's going on down in Baywood. Great stuff. So exciting. New businesses, always the farmers market. I don't know if you've noticed, the farmers market is kind of creeping around the corner down there. it's sort of expanding its footprint. And we have a new building that's coming through the land use committee for the corner of 2nd Street and Santa Maria, which is right on the corner of the farmer's market. Right now, that's an empty lot. And there's been quite a bit of discussion about parking. The county has proposed parking, parallel parking as the standard. And right now we see a lot of head-in parking or angle parking in that area. And so we are looking at possibly sitting down with Supervisor Gibson, sitting down with the county and saying, can we create a special business district? Baywood is already a special district, but can we create a parking regulation that's appropriate for our community in Baywood? Because we don't really fit the regular county regulations when it comes to parking. You know, we don't have sidewalks, we don't have a lot of the things that you would expect. So we're looking forward to maybe having that conversation and bringing that to the council sometime in the future. And that's my report. I'm happy to answer any questions about that. Don't see any hands. Moving on.
Oh,
Oh, Molly.
okay. So is the idea to form a parking, your idea for possibly for the future is to form a parking district so that we have a plan for further development with how parking is going to be laid out? Or is it also to raise money by charging parking fees?
Yeah, there's not been any discussion about charging for parking fees,
Uh-huh.
but really this came about because the county has expressed that they want all parking to be parallel, even in areas where currently we have angle parking, which obviously we get more cars in an angle parking situation than we do with a parallel parking situation. And so we understand that the county has their regulations and we don't necessarily fit their model. So we thought it might make sense to sit down and work with the county about creating a parking district for Baywood that would make sense for us. We don't know exactly what that looks like. We do know that we don't have areas that are available for parking lots. And there's limited availability except on the street. And so if you have street parking, we want to be able to maximize street parking or create some other kind of concept. We have a study that was done by the Safe Streets Safety Assessment, and they recommended back-in parking. I know that's been tried elsewhere in the county, and people just don't quite get the hang of that. And so it hasn't been very popular. So we're open to ideas. Our goal is to have the best amount of parking for Baywood as possible, safe parking, abundant parking that will benefit the businesses and the activities that are going on down in Baywood.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, consent. Agenda items, we have one. Does anybody have any questions?
I move approval of the consent item.
Okay. I have Jim. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Jim, Molly, all in favor?
Aye.
Any noes? Okay. Unanimous. Very good. I just want to make a note who did it. All right. Regular agenda items. We have one. Who's going to do this presentation?
Maybe it'd be best if Sam Kreiser kicks us off here and walks through the project.
Oh, sounds good. There you are, Sam.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hold on, can I share my screen or no? You want me to just walk through it? Doesn't matter to me.
I
think you could just walk through it.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I'm here to discuss the Moskowitz residence for our clients, Jackie and Lon Moskowitz. I am the designer and hopefully general contractor, assuming that we get approval. They are proposing to develop a parcel on Pasadena Drive down in Baywood. It's a 2321 square foot residence with an attached 2-car 621 square foot garage. It's a nice kind of modest design, low slope roof, single story, focusing towards the bay, really lots of glass pointed towards the bay. Stucco exterior, a standing seam metal roof, neutral colors, especially from the exterior. Just kind of want to blend in with the landscape. And yeah, that's a basic synopsis of the development. I can jump into kind of the initial or my statements on the items that were covered on the land use view, if that, or on the land use committee meeting, if that's appropriate.
Sure.
Yes.
Go ahead.
That'd be
Go
great.
ahead.
Yeah, the first comment was just, and I think this is the biggest comment, is the proposed, we're proposing a 50-foot setback from the wetland or from the property line. I can't remember which, but the Estero area plan basically states that there's a 75-foot setback with, it may be 50. And I think that posed a fair amount of confusion. And I think Mason can probably weigh in a little bit on that as well. But from our perspective, the final determination regarding the proposed setback is dependent on the biological resource assessment and slope analysis, providing that the data supports both of these, or that the data that comes back from both of these reports, that will dictate our ultimate location. The biological resource assessment cannot be completed until the spring, or until the end of spring. But the initial wetland assessment is favorable. Of course, that's nothing official. Prior to resubmission of our minor use permit, and in response to the information hold letter that we received, they've requested a slope stability assessment. We didn't discuss this in the land use meeting, but we'll have that performed from a licensed geotechnical engineer. Basically, once we have the final biological resource assessment and slope analysis, we'll submit that to the planning department, and they will have the necessary information in order to make their recommendation relative to the setback. We're proposing a 50-foot setback per the Estero area plan. But we also recognize that if either or both of the professionals that are hired to perform the slope analysis and biological resource assessment find something that doesn't allow us to put it at 50 feet, then we will adjust from there. So that's kind of where we stand on that initial issue. The second item was a concern from council member about a degrading shoreline. I don't think that anyone has any ability to weigh in, or so if we're going to make a ruling on a potential natural disaster or climate change, does that mean that if there's an earthquake, I can sue the county? No. Yes. Okay. I'll let that one go. And then there was another concern from a council member that there were some plants removed from the property about a year ago, and that there was dirt added to the lot. The clients that the parcel owners, they live across the street and use this property as a nice little, it's their front yard. They have a picnic table out there, and they brought in just enough dirt to level off their picnic table. It was a very small amount. It will be removed and restored to its natural habitat once we get this project going, assuming that we do. And the plants, he the client the next day reached out to the biologist that's on the property, sent him a picture of the area that he had basically pulled back some plants off of his lower fence that's down on the bay that started to lean because of the plants growing on it. He sent a picture of that to the biologist. The biologist said, yeah, that might be this, I can't remember the name, but it is a protected species or sensitive habitat. And my client said, I didn't pull them out. I trimmed them back and I will not touch them again. And he just basically didn't realize that those were protected. The last item or comment was that they currently no will serve letter, and then the credits, the will serve application and plans are under review at the Los Osos CSD, and everything's been paid in order for that to start happening. The Title 19 certificate is not a requirement for the minor use permit to be approved and not a part of this land use view. So we believe it's ready for LOCAC as submitted.
Do we have any comments from the land use committee? Anything you need to add before we have a discussion on this?
No, Sam did a good job summing it up. Trish? Something.
I was just going to see if Mason could talk about the 50 versus 75-foot setback.
Okay, Mason?
Yeah, thanks. I think Sam generally hit the nail on the head with that request. So the sterile area plan requires a 75-foot setback from the wetland for that property specifically, but there is a provision, and I believe it's specifically for that tract. I want to say tract 40 or 80, but there is a provision within the sterile area plan for that property that it can use an ordinance that's established in Title 23 that would allow an applicant, an agent, in this case Sam and his client, to make a request to an exception to the wetland standard, to the wetland setback standard that varies throughout the county. In this instance, it's a 75-foot required, reduced to a 50-foot. There are some instances where it's 100 and they can go down to 75. It's not abnormal. The distances vary. To Sam's point, it is contingent upon several recommendations from subject matter experts, the first one being a biologist. And we see this, even where we don't see it with coastal wetlands, it's not uncommon for us to consult biologists on inland projects. To give you an example of one I had recently was, it was a community in North County and the property abutted a creek, and we had to rely on a biologist to make a determination of how close the disturbance can get to that riparian habitat, because that ultimately affects our environmental determination under CEQA. So this isn't an abnormal process by any means. We would primarily refer to a biologist. The biologist will look at the wetland and establishment of that and make a determination for where the edge of that wetland is established. It's called a wetland delineation. Something like this that has a bluff or a cliff, not being a biologist, may be a little easier to make a determination on than something where the topography is very level. So part of the plans that the applicant and the agent submitted have that delineation on it, but because a in-season resource assessment is required, the delineation study wasn't submitted. My understanding from Sam and working with one of his employees is the next submittal will have that comprehensive information, and then that allows the county to make a determination about whether or not that setback is appropriate, and then that determination gets implemented as part of the recommendation for approval, right? There's legal findings that we have to make in the coastal zone. There's a plethora of them. A lot of those have to do with environmentally sensitive habitat and sensitive resource areas. That becomes part of those legal findings for the project. I think it also hits to, I believe, point number 2 that's on the agenda, and the next point that Sam had raised, which was the coastline degrading. In this instance, what also informs that 50-foot setback, because it's a bluff, it's kind of a 2-in-1. It's both the wetland delineation and then the slope analysis. But there's a very strict standard in the Astera area plan It's figure 7-1, and it has to do with a flood hazard or flood combining designation. And part of that is the slope stability analysis that that Sam had spoke about, and that's also not an uncommon requirement anywhere we see a bluff like that. We generally ask for some kind of slope stability analysis, which then also helps inform the setback requirement. There's a second part of that provision in the Estera area plan that requires us to address some of the concerns of point 2. And specifically, that was erosion of the coastline, flood inundation, coastline degradation due to climate change. I can't speak to the legality of, suing the county or anything like that. It's completely out of my purview, but we do require a plethora of technical analysis when it comes to both the wetland exception and determining development in proximity to a bluff, especially one that may be eroding. That property specifically is within the combining designation for the flood hazard and does require pretty significant technical analysis for staff to make the determination and the recommendation.
Thank you very much.
Mason, great. I mean, so nice to have you here to help us through these technical issues. So my understanding is that there are 2 boxes to be checked. One is the biological study, which won't be done until the spring, and the other is the slope stability study. And those 2 boxes will need to be checked in order for the county to proceed. But that's not our problem as LOCAC. As LOCAC, we just need to look at the project and decide if it meets our standards or whatever the land use requirements are for our community. So that was great technical stuff, but that's your box to check. Molly, I saw your hand up. Did you have a question?
You just answered it.
Okay, great. So
can I make a motion?
Brad, I see let me answer Brad. I have Brad and I have David. So let's go ahead. Brad,
Okay.
you.
Sam, did you address the absence of a will serve letter?
Yes,
line...
it's been submitted and the CSD is processing it.
Okay, so the question I have, there's a statement here that says they have 190 credits and need 256. Is that being taken care of?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Okay, great. David, you had a question?
Yeah, I mean, this isn't necessarily something that would affect maybe LOCAC's approval of it or not, but as I looked at the plans, I guess the estimates are sea level will rise about a foot in the next 25 years and about a meter in the next 50 years. And I also noted that the ground water levels ground table is quite high there. And as the sea level goes up, you'd expect the the water table to also go up. So I would, as owners, I would want to make sure that the property was built and designed and engineered for higher groundwater levels as well as the risk of higher sea level.
Yeah, and we have a full soils report and geotechnical analysis that will guide our foundation design, likely to handle considerable liquefaction, which is that groundwater concern.
Okay.
Andrea.
It's actually a question probably for Mason. I'm just curious, just in general, you referred to this as coastal, which is, it's in the bay, but I guess it would be coastal. So does this project, and again, it's not our purview, but does this project then come under like some of the requirements or prohibitions on coastal armoring and that sort of thing?
Sorry, can you help me understand?
So when a lot of homes get developed, especially on, on the coast, and there's bluff instability, the Coastal Commission is generally not favorable of coastal armoring. And so I'm just curious, does that come into play on this land or no, because it's in a bay, not waterfront? I'm just more curious than anything. I figured you could answer that.
Yeah, I think it's let me try my best. I think it's a little bit of a hard answer. I'm trying to find, there's a, right under that figure I had previously mentioned. Sorry, give me one moment. Right under that figure I had previously mentioned that talks about the flood inundation zone. There is a provision for this area regarding armoring. Generally, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's not favorable for coastal. Some of the determinations we've had from local Central California Coastal Commission staff is, we really only see that looked at favorably when there's a health, life, and safety risk, as in like a house is actively falling into the ocean. As far as whether or not that would be their purview, they are actively involved in the referral process for this project. It definitely would be in their purview. If you look at the property aerially, it is Bayside, but approximately 10 feet off of the property line is what we call COJ, or coastal original jurisdiction, which means they have complete authority. So they would hold the permitting and entitlement process for that. So if there was armoring or something, they would potentially be unless they, delegated authority to the county, they would be the ones that would be involved in that process. I'm trying to pull up the standard that I had just mentioned for you, because it outlines armoring directly. If you want to give me a second, please.
Wow. Great question, Andrea.
Learning so much.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with the site. It's beautiful.
It is beautiful.
It
It
a
is
nice piece of
beautiful.
property, yeah.
Yes, I'm sure the home will be beautiful as well.
Oh,
Yeah.
the pictures are gorgeous. You guys are designing a beautiful home there.
Um,
Thank you. Are you ready, Mason?
yeah, so it's going to be Los Osos community plan. It's going to be page 149 of the PDF if anyone wants to look at it.
I will.
It'd be planning area standard. And it's under it's like related to a Cosmos projected sea level rise exhibit, which has to do with the flood designation. There's two provisions. One of them is for any legally established, shoreline protective device or armoring. It would have to be incorporated. An analysis of that armoring would have to be incorporated in the studies that I previously mentioned. For projects that don't have one, there's a prohibition standard. And just reading some of that, specifically, any bluff protection structure shall not be permitted to protect new development. So as any new development comes in, it can't be accompanied by any permits for that. Any development on the bluff top or shoreline lots that don't have, a previously permitted CDP for shoreline protection, it essentially will be conditioned to require, prior to issuance of a permit, that there's a deed restriction against the property that ensures no protection structure shall be proposed or constructed to protect the development. And that expressly waives any future right to construct devices for that parcel. And that's split between PDF pages 150 and 151 of the newly certified Los Osos community plan.
Great. Thanks, Mason.
We're going to go to the question, but I just want to make sure that everybody is following this conversation. Who wants to give the definition of armoring so everybody understands what we're talking about?
I think Mason should.
Yeah, with the caveat, it's not a complete legal or coastal definition, but generally the term armoring, a lot of us may have seen seawalls is a good example. The term seawall over time has kind of morphed into the terminology armoring. We're starting to see in the reason for that, just to give you guys a little bit of background, and it doesn't mean it's any more permissible to the Coastal Commission or able to make the findings for a CDP. However, traditionally a seawall was a seawall. It was just that. It was a very hard, rough transition. The term armoring is used in planning a lot more consistently now because it alludes to different aspects of bluff protection. And so to give you guys two examples that we recently saw, I think last year we saw them presented at the Association of Environmental Professionals, or AEP, related to, I think, Monterey or San Diego. They use the word armoring because you can use riprap, right? Like rocks, rather than a hard, fast seawall that ties into a bluff. So it's a little more environmentally sound. But what we're starting to find is, similar in geomorphology, we see kind of how rivers meander over time. A lot of that is driven by vegetation, right? And the rooting of the vegetation holding, soil cohesion and holding those soils in place. What we're seeing with soft armoring, so to speak, is both rocks and vegetation. Not saying any of that is any more permitted, and we're not seeing it. It's not something that we see with development projects, but in the overall scope of planning, that's what armoring would refer to.
Cool. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank
very
you.
interesting, but where are we?
We're going to ask for the question unless anybody else has a comment. We
I
went
think
down
we
a rabbit
wandered
hole,
a bit
Jim.
afield here.
Okay.
Let's come back to
So,
it. And what is the recommendation of the land use committee on this?
We actually voted to move it forward 5-2.
I move that this approved by this council.
okay, so we have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, Jim and Trish, all in favor?
Aye, including Molly.
Any nays? I don't see any nays. Okay, so it was Jim and Molly.
It was
Alrighty.
Jim and Trish.
Oh, Trish.
Yeah.
Molly, Trish, whatever.
All right, well, somebody keep track of this. All right, great. Thank you so much. That was very fascinating and good job, Sam.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Sam.
guys.
And,
Appreciate
and
it.
congratulations
Mason.
to Jackie
appreciate
and
it.
Lauren for
Thanks, Sam.
their
Thank
project.
you.
Thank
We
you.
will be doing more of this, I believe.
I'm sure
Oh,
we
yes.
will.
All right. Thank you guys.
Good
Thank
deal.
you.
All right. So let's get on to some business items. Number one, the website revision and upgrades. Just a few more comments that David wanted to make regarding the work he's doing on the website. And if you haven't gone to the website, I suggest you do, because there's already, it looks a lot more current as far as what's being presented there. So David.
Yes, so I think a few things that I would like to do, in addition, as I mentioned, is have a about LOCAC page, which would just kind of cover the mission, purpose, roles, where it is in the process, who's the members, how what's the committee structure, how the elections work, and have a link to the policies and procedures and stuff like that. And then, some of that material is already on the contacts page, which to me, it doesn't fit quite so well there. And so some of that could be moved over to the About LOCAC page. And then the contact page could be a little bit more clear about, who people in the public should contact about what kinds of things. Primarily, contact your division representative, because that's why we have divisions, and contact the subcommittee chairs on about something particular in their subcommittees, and make that a little clearer. In the longer run, I think it would also be nice to make the files a little bit more accessible. I mean, one problem I have with the Google files is it's really hard to tell what file you're looking at until you actually open the file. And especially for files that are like commonly used, it might be good if we just put them as a PDF link with a descriptor so that they'd be easier to get to. But that I get talked with Gary and others to figure out how we would, how best to do that. I think we also need to just kind of keep the news items updated, and they're all kind of old. I'm thinking the news should be mostly links to news articles that have been written elsewhere. So, for example, there's now a Estero Bay news article on the Sunnyside School. We can put a link to that up as current news, rather than trying for us to rewrite, write news articles about everything that we're doing, which seems like too much work for us. Yeah, I guess another thing is sort of in the communications area, we're trying to send out notices on Nextdoor and on Support Los Osos and to the email lists with kind of the same information that's on the homepage, which is basically what meetings are happening and what major things happened, and refer people back to the website. And I think maybe we also need to have some more links to some of the print publications so that they put a notice of some of our meetings and things like that. But those are kind of my thoughts on it. Like any feedback, you know, and also maybe discussion about how best to proceed. I'm a little cautious about just going in and writing stuff and making it myself, but I'm happy to work with others to make sure someone else is looking at stuff and also just whatever other comments people have.
Well, again, thank you for taking that on. I know Gary's been shouldering all of this work by himself. And so it's really nice to have another person stepping in and assisting with that. And if there's anybody else who wants to help participate, that would be great. And you should go to the website, check it out, and then come back with your comments and your suggestions so we can get the best, very best website possible for our advisory council. Comments, questions? Molly.
Thank you, David, for working on that. And I will definitely look at the website. And I'm not like an IT person, but I'd be really happy to like look at the things you're talking about in terms of, you know, what page comes up first and how you get information from the page. I'm a strong believer that these kind of websites, you know, they're only going to be really helpful to people if it's easy and kind of what I would call intuitive for people to get around in the website and learn and have most, you know, the most important information kind of showing up when the person first gets there, and then kind of shows them how to get through. So I could be a kind of a dummy tester, I guess, to see how it works if I was particularly a person just looking for some particular bit of information.
Sure.
Anyway, I really appreciate your help with that.
Good. Yeah, happy to include you.
Okay.
Anything else on that subject? Shall we move on to our next very, very fun project, policies and procedures? Okay. I mean, you know, this document, Trish Bartel, you're responsible for this.
Well, look, I redid them twice, okay? And the first time I had to type up the whole thing because they only had it in paper. So
okay. So what I'm saying is
updated every 2 years. So this is our second year.
This is a really good document. It's very thorough. If you didn't figure that out, you didn't read it. Okay. We have a couple of minor changes that need to happen. We've moved the starting date of our council meeting from 7 o'clock to 6:30, and we've changed the ending date from 9:30 till 9 o'clock. That's pretty easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are some other areas, however, that are maybe not so easy. Page 5, it talks about communication of actions to the county staff. At the LOCAC meeting, the secretary will prepare and submit a letter to the county planning and building, et cetera, et cetera. We don't have a secretary. And unless somebody here is ready to volunteer to be secretary, we might want to rewrite this in a way that makes sense. If you're following along, it's number G on page 5. It talks specifically about a letter will be sent via email within 3 days of the meeting. That would be our general meeting. And the chairperson would be CC'd on the notification, and the letter will be posted on our LOCAC website along with the minutes. Okay, well, first of all, we're not doing minutes, we're doing recordings. And I don't think we've been posting any letters on the website. So Jim, I see your hands
I
up.
would just, this probably dates back to when you guys were meeting in person.
Correct.
And there was no recording of the meeting. And the only way to get the information was somebody had to take notes and send those notes up. But now the meeting's recorded, so I don't even know why we would have to send any notes. I mean, they can watch the meeting.
I mean, I do have some clarification. The note is when I would share what I did after today's meeting, so that I would send Mason a copy of how we voted tonight on the regular agenda item and the consent agenda item. So, but that was it. You know, we approved this, and these were our questions if we had questions that weren't answered. So that has to go out to them, because they put that in a file and it's really important for them to have. I do the same thing after land use. So they get that information after land use, and then they can follow it up and say, okay, now they've had LOCAC, they approved it at LOCAC and it can move forward. So that, yes, but I don't think it needs to go on our website or anything else. But I think definitely it still needs to go to the county.
Okay,
Right, so there'd be a recording of a motion and who first and second the motion and the vote on the motion.
Yeah, it just
So-
saves them time from having to listen to it all the time.
Well, you know, I'm gonna be sending those kind of messages to Mason after our land use meetings in terms of what our decisions are with the land use committee. I would be willing to do the same after the main LOCAC meeting if it's just something as simple as like the things we voted on.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So, because this, you know, honestly, this is really geared towards land use
Yeah.
issues. So I
Yeah.
think we take out that entire paragraph and then we change it, and somebody could rewrite this in a way that says notice will be sent to the county about how the vote, however you want to say it. Who would be willing to do that?
I can write that paragraph.
Okay, perfect.
to write that
Trish will write
paragraph?
the paragraph.
And that's on
Molly
page
will
5.
send the notice.
So Tris, you're gonna update the procedure, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm gonna update the procedure, but
Okay.
then you're gonna do the work.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Update.
Okay,
Okay.
great. Moving on. On page 6, Andrea had a comment about comments under number 5, public comment, that they should be limited to 3 minutes. And she suggested that we, where is your little, I think I have your comment here somewhere.
My other suggestion was one bite at the apple.
I agree.
We get in this dialogue that's ridiculous.
I agree as well.
Amen.
Public comment is a public comment, period.
Yeah.
It's not a public discussion.
Correct.
Okay, so you get one comment.
Per item.
Will we be perceived, if we do this, will we be perceived as shutting people down and
Yeah,
not being
because they
given
had their time to
attention?
talk.
What's that?
They had their time to talk, so ask your question appropriately.
Well, I think the council could always agree to hear a second question if it wanted to. I mean, it's not like you never,
True.
right?
True.
You could always,
yeah.
the council can always, you know.
The problem is you get into I mean, this is coming from the government wonks, right? You know, you get into this, you can get into like this beauty contest that, you know, Molly got to speak twice on item 7, but David only got to speak once. It just makes sense to me to just be, you know, it's 3 minutes, it's one time on each item, and
No,
move on. But I'm, you know, I've
agree.
been outvoted before, so.
No, I think
All right.
as,
I like
as
what you said, Andrea.
I guess
you
I'm used to
introduced-
the U.S. Congress where they have a certain limit, but then they can always extend their
Yeah.
remarks with
Well.
unanimous consent or whatever.
That's a terrible example today, David.
Yeah, that probably is.
Sorry.
as you introduce the comments, you can always remind everyone of the ground rules. You have 3 minutes
Yeah.
and one comment only.
That's a great idea, Brad.
All right, so do we want to vote on this? Or should we just you want to make a motion?
To make the changes and bring it back, we'll look at the whole thing.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what I'm with Jim.
So we're just gonna
Make the changes.
add, under public comment, it'll be limited to 3 minutes and to one comment per person. Does that sound?
One comment per item per person.
item,
Doesn't
not
need to be
just-
specific.
yeah. They can
Per
speak again on another
item,
Yeah.
Yeah.
per person.
I mean, they can still speak on, you know,
Other items.
yeah.
Good point, good point. And they can always come back next month and make a public comment if it's not on the agenda. They can still keep commenting. Okay, so then, moving on, couple of 9 o'clocks.
I'd like to move the closing time to 8:30. 2 hours is plenty of time to do the business. I don't know why we have to go to 9.
We don't usually go later than 8:30.
We usually don't, and that's why I say, let people know what the expectation is. And if we're got more business to take care of after 8:30, we just extend the meeting.
Okay,
Easy enough to do. At least
What do
lay out the expectation.
We can
We
make a
will
motion to
well.
extend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. Make a motion to extend.
All right, so
Yeah.
you want me to change the 9 o'clock to 8:30?
Yeah, and then then the council has the
We can.
ability to extend it with a motion and a second and a majority approval.
Right.
Okay. Make a note. Changed 8:30. Yes, I'm gonna make these changes and then everybody will get a chance to look at them. Page 12 under meetings. Again, there was this thing about sending notices and drafting minutes. All of our meetings are being recorded now, right?
Correct.
So,
So maybe that language could just be swapped.
Right. And I don't know if Zoom has now an AI ability to actually take notes from the Zoom meeting.
we have the AI, it sends notes to the LOCAC info email. So
Okay.
yes, they're available. They're just not very good.
No.
They're not
okay.
very good. So, but here it says the committee chairperson shall send to the LOCAC chairperson a notice of all action taken, identifying all projects being forwarded. You guys are already doing that. Land
Right.
use.
Yeah,
you
we're
send
already
to
doing
me.
that. Mhm.
Yeah, we are.
So I'm not going to change that. I'm going to leave that, but the draft minutes, I'm taking that out.
Yeah.
Remove. Okay, moving on. All right, elections. I think we're going to need a little more time to talk about elections.
I think a election committee should look at it, bring back a recommendation.
All right, first of all, let me address a question that came from Andrea. Andrea, you said, oh, I don't think we've ever had a chairperson. You haven't been here long enough to go through an election, so we haven't had to elect a chair and an election committee. But the next election will happen in 2026. And because terms are going to end in 2026. So we will have an election and there will be a chairperson. And the process of doing the elections is you have to, first of all, you have to register and prove that you live in Los Osos by showing your driver's license or a utility bill. And then you're given a ballot, and then you have to actually show up at a site and hand over your ballot. I mean, you vote, right? Obviously. And then you have to, I mean, it's a very old-fashioned system. But I don't know how to do it better because
No, I've been through one. I just think it's super convoluted and I'm not sure very many people vote. I mean,
hardly anybody votes.
you rally your friends to vote for you. It just doesn't, yeah, I'm only critical in that it seems super convoluted. I think it's worthwhile to maybe see what other groups do. And somebody, maybe it was David and I were talking, but there's some advisory board rules that apparently we have to comply with too. I can't remember who I was talking to. So I think we have a group, somebody look at it. Because
Yeah.
it just, I don't know if anyone else read it, but it's like 7 pages or well, okay, maybe 3, but it's like you
Seems
gotta
like that.
stand on your right leg and wear a green shirt and show up at somewhere and fill in your ballot with a red pen.
You know, it's hard because the person voting has to know what their district is. They can only vote for somebody in their district. And so we have to verify that that person's voting in the right district, that they live in Los Osos. I don't know the process for doing that any different. So I'm curious to know what we could come up with. And then as far as voting in person versus electronic, I mean, there's just a lot of questions around this, and I would love to have a better system in time for our next election. So
Yeah, maybe that's the goal.
do I have some volunteers to look into this and come back with some suggestions on how we could improve this system?
Sure, I'll volunteer.
David?
Yeah.
You're
And
so
it seems like this is something we shouldn't
Andrea,
have to
Andrea?
reinvent ourselves.
Yeah, I will since I complained
Okay,
about it.
Andrea, David, one more person?
I'll do it.
Brad, okay, and Brad, David, Andrea, anybody else? Or
I
we
saw
good?
Jim's hand.
Jim?
Oh,
Uh-oh. That's
it
Jim.
would,
Yes.
So
The other
it'd be
Jim.
good.
Jen,
Make
All
sure we
right.
get the right Jim in there. Yeah.
Jim Salio, okay. Yeah, not Jim Sheffield.
Good.
Molly, did you have your hand up or did you say something?
No, I was just laughing.
But I was saying, I mean, it seems like
Okay.
every advisory committee in the state has to deal with the same issue. So
Yeah.
there ought to
Yeah,
be
there's
some
got to be some,
models.
Yeah.
and maybe at our orientation, we can learn stuff from the other,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
other
Let's
advisory
find
committees.
out.
Good
Let's
idea.
find out. Okay, so we have a committee of 4 people. They're gonna look into the whole election thing, and I think that's really all that I have. So
And
awesome.
I would like to nominate Andrea as the chair of that committee.
Why
It's
are you
me.
doing this to me, Jim?
Play the loudest, that's why.
I love it.
Sure. I'll rally the troops.
Okay.
We might need it.
Andrea.
Deborah,
We might need it.
Deborah, I have one more question.
Okay.
So is the idea with this committee to just look at how to do elections better? Is that the?
Yeah, so you have 2 tasks. Find out a better system and write it up for the policy and procedure manual.
Okay.
So that it's, so it's codified.
I was the one that was talking to Andre about this issue. I believe
Thanks.
there's some strictures on the state code on the community, on the advisory committees, community advisory committees. And some of that was probably taken boilerplate out of that language. So I would suggest that we look up the legal strictures on that first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gary. I knew it was somebody. Sorry.
Right on.
You
Okay.
forgot me. Okay, fine.
Okay, let's keep going. We have 2 more things to do. Sunnyside School topic on LOCAC agenda. Okay. I'm just going to tell you, I have taken the position for LOCAC that we're facilitating, we're not necessarily advocating for Sunnyside, even though we are. And so I'm asking you to help me figure out how we're going to position the topic of Sunnyside as we go forward. Andrea has suggested we need to keep it in front of everybody. We need to be talking about it, at all the meetings. And so Andrea, you have your hand up. What's your suggestion?
Well, I think actually, and I didn't know that, I mean, it makes sense. I didn't know that CSD was going to talk about it. So if CSD is going to talk about it during I think unless there's something that we're planning, I think that's fine. And I don't think we need to, because it's going to be on, maybe we always put on the agenda under CSD so people know.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
fine with that.
Okay. All right, cool. Great. Because I did make the point that for those people who are in fixed incomes and don't necessarily want to see their property taxes go up, we have to represent that segment as well.
Sure.
And so I don't want them to feel disenfranchised. So yes, I agree. The CSD is exactly where that needs to be. And then we can always comment. Any more discussion on that? Awesome. Last thing, in-person meetings. Larry Bender brought this up a couple times now about we need to be out in the community more. I'd like to hear your ideas about doing occasional in-person meetings. I thought, for example, after we have an election and we have new council members coming on board, that very first council meeting, we would do it in person. We could do it at the CSD office. That would be a good opportunity
That's
to meet
reasonable.
the new person. And then we maybe do one more in the year. I don't know when that might be, but we might do 1 to 2 in-person meetings. And then the committees should think about doing an in-person meeting as well, but I don't know how you would want to make a decision as to when. I know when our transportation committee did an in-person meeting because we had a review of the corridor study and it was really important. So if you have something really important, you might want to say, let's do this in person. How about some
Committee chairs can make
discussion?
that decision. I don't think the council needs to direct committee chairs to do it.
No, but I'm just putting it out there that you
Yeah.
might want to consider doing some in-person meetings at some point during the year. and I'm just opening this up for discussion. I'm not
Yeah,
telling you to do
what
it.
would be the benefit of in-person meetings over the committee meetings we conduct now?
So there are certain people who feel like they get more out of meeting in person than doing on Zoom, either because they don't like Zoom or they're not comfortable on Zoom, can't ask their questions. So that's the only
I just made a
reason.
comment as a new member. It's a little bit hard to getting to know everybody just on Zoom, especially if you're on Zoom in a public meeting. You know, it's a little easier having, you know, informal conversations with people and things, you know, if you see them face to face.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I'm a Zoom fan. This is so convenient.
I feel the same way.
Me too.
Deborah,
But
is
I
there,
do feel like that one meeting at the beginning after an election
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
it
would
would
agree
be
with that.
fun, actually. It would be really fun. Jim, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking if we do have an in-person meeting, we should make it a hybrid meeting, so it's on Zoom as well. And there's technology, we could use like an owl or something like that to do the meeting, but that way people who can't attend, you know, in person still have the opportunity to do it on Zoom.
Yeah, well, we can do that at the CSD because they do that there. All of their
Okay.
meetings are hybrid.
Okay.
So they have all the equipment available to accommodate that. Andrea?
Deborah, I like the idea. I think it's good. One meeting a year in person. Is there a cost that is going to be charged to us from the CSD for using that equipment and their room? Or is somebody here technologically savvy to run their equipment?
Well, so far, the cost has been keeping Ron Munns from going home at night.
Yeah.
He's been very generous with allowing us to use their room, and it just means he has to stay behind to run the equipment. So we need to check with him
Okay.
and see how I don't think there's a cost for being in the room. It's just
Okay.
the cost of having him there.
Yeah. I like the idea. I think it's worth looking into.
Okay, so once a year, right? That's what we're talking
Mhm.
about. And it would be when we start a new year, which is in May, actually.
Wow.
Okay.
Isn't that right? Trish, I'm right on that.
That is correct. Our new
Okay.
year starts at the end of May. We do elections in May, we do a new budget in May so that we're ready and hit the road running in June. But
Okay,
it's the May meeting that starts the new year.
okay. So budget. Mr. Stanfield, we need a budget next month.
Okay. I'll have it for you.
Start working on a budget. And so it's a good question about cost. If we had to rent a room at Sea Pines, that could cost us. We may want to build that into the budget because that's what we had in the
budget.
past. So I'll check with Ron about doing a meeting in May.
Sounds
in
good.
person. Okay. All right.
On the budget, I was just,
Yeah.
do we raise, how do we get revenue?
Bruce gives us money.
From Supervisor Gibson's
Supervisor
office.
Gibson's money, okay.
Mhm. So we write up a budget, we send it to Blake. Blake gets it approved, and then they send us a check.
So
That's our only
supervisor
way.
discretionary funds.
Yep,
Exactly.
yep. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're
I move
adjourned.
we adjourn.
Nice
I'll
meeting.
second.
Or
Good
8:30.
meeting.
All right.
Good meeting.
8:30.
Good
Thank you,
job.
Deborah.
Thanks.
I wouldn't have thought it's
Everybody.
possible.
Good night,
All right.
everyone.
All right.
Good
Good
night.
night, thank you.